discussing. If you've just tuned in, we're looking at revelation that, according to these messages, denied by Matt Hancock in a statement, by the way, that Matt Hancock rejected the Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty's advice to test all residents being taken into English care homes for COVID early 2020. In April 2020, he, in a message, Chris Whitty told the Health Secretary that there should be testing for all going into care homes. Hancock did not follow that advice. He told his advisor that it muddies the waters. Instead, he said just mandatory testing for those entering care homes from hospital, not those coming from the community. We already know that actually early on people were not being tested even before they went in from hospital. We know 18,000 people died in care homes, very elderly, vulnerable people, the most at risk from COVID, and those people died in the first couple of months of the COVID pandemic in 2020, and in total 40,000 over 2 years. Let's talk about this now with someone we've spoken to many times over this COVID period, and that's Diane Mayhew. She's the co-founder of Rights for Residents, a group set up basically to get the rights of residents in care homes to see their loved ones during this period as they were locked away for not just weeks, months and months, even years at a time. Good morning to you, Diane.
Good morning, Julia. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming on, and thank you for everything you did. You did it not just for you and your own family, but for many, many others, and giving people hope and fighting just to have a chance for people to see their loved ones, to see their parents, to see their grandparents, for husbands and wives separated for months on end, and many often suffering from dementia and not understanding on earth what was happening to them. You very sadly lost your mother-in-law, died in a care home in August 2021. You also lost your father. He died in hospital over this period. You have been at, you know, the absolutely, you know, at the front end of this, dealing with this. Tell us your reaction to the revelations in those lockdown files about Matt Hancock's messages.
Wow. I don't even know where to start, Julia, to be honest. I mean, clearly voices were raised in government and ignored. And, you know, thousands of families were crying out for help during this period, actually exposing the fact that people were dying of other risks, not just COVID. We experienced ourselves the huge decline and deterioration in my mother-in-law, Jenny's mum, through a window. You know, she had dementia. She couldn't understand why we couldn't come in. And ours is sadly not an isolated case. Thousands of people tell us that, you know, their loved ones simply gave up the will to live. They stopped taking the medication. There was nothing worth living for. They stopped eating and drinking. Who protected them from these risks? And these risks could have been avoided. And this revelation today, it's just adding salt to already open wounds, because the wounds are still open.
Oh, they are. Yeah, there's no doubt at all they're still open. I mean, this is the thing. We just spoke to Dr. Barrett Pankania saying, you know, they were already plans. You know, in the event of a pandemic, you would still allow people to be with people for end-of-life care. But the key thing is those lives ended more sooner because people didn't have that care. A lot of people who don't have loved ones in care homes are under the impression that it's horrible families who don't really care about their loved ones and they just ship them into a care home and get rid of them. It couldn't be further from the truth. It's an anguished, really upsetting decision for many families when people start needing 24-hour, round-the-clock care. They can't be kept safe. They don't have a spare room. They've got to go to work. They've got kids. But most families go in and visit, not just weekly, but sometimes even daily. Many husbands and wives, they're visited daily by their other half to look after them. And a lot of the care they get in care homes isn't from care workers. It's from their family members.
And that's exactly why, Julia, we are still campaigning for Gloria's Law, because we have to protect people in the future with a new legislation that guarantees the right of every resident and people in hospital to have an essential care supporter at all times, in all circumstances. They aren't visitors. They should be seen equally as important as staff, because the care that they provide is vital to the mental health and well-being of the person. And the essential care supporter should be attached to the person, not the place, because we all move around the system as we get older or even younger. You know, so we have to make sure this never, ever happens again. I never got a chance to say goodbye to my own dad, and that is something that even my mum couldn't see him or be with him or hold his hand at the end. And we were so grateful to the NHS staff that they were there. Someone promised me that they would be with him. But, you know, this haunts me. What my dad were thinking, God only knows, and people in care homes as well. It's a national scandal that this happened. And the fact that this has all been revealed today, it just beggars belief, honestly. And there needs to be lessons learnt from this. Let's get this legislation passed across health and social care settings. Whether you're in hospital, whether you're in a care home, Gloria's law must be passed.
Yeah, but the key thing is, why would a civilised country need a law to require people to make sure that someone had someone loved one to hold their hand in their moment of death? There were so many anguish stories at that time, and all of that stopping people being with their loved ones didn't save a single life. It didn't risk a single life by allowing them in, and yet it happened. To her credit, though, Helen Whately, a woman you and I castigated repeatedly, I took her to task on air repeatedly. She was the care homes minister at the time. She was, behind the scenes, we can see, pleading with Matt Hancock, the health secretary, to allow loved ones to be with their family members in care homes. She pleading for them to have that access. And there was so many. I mean, even when the rules were made, you could see if one person tested positive, then it was 28 days till someone could be in, and everyone was confined to their rooms. No one allowed out to have any interaction, even with other care home residents. It was cruel and unusual punishment. I mean, it was putting elderly people with dementia into isolation to all intents and purposes. But she, behind the scenes, was pleading, but he was having none of it. What do you make of that particular revelation?
No, Julia, we met with Helen Whately several times, but what we didn't know was that this was happening behind the scenes. She obviously had took some of it on board, and she was trying to, get our message across. And we had a debate in Parliament in October last year that was led by Dan Carden, Liverpool Walton MP, and a coalition of cross-party MPs spoke out. Tracy Crouch, Tory, Liz Savile-Roberts, Plaid Cymru, and Daisy Cooper, Lib Dems, and Helen Whately listened to that debate. And she's been personally affected as well. That's all I'm going to say on that. But she's receptive now. She gets it.
But we now know that she did get it at the time. Your final message, just in one sentence. Matt Hancock, I mean, he's put out a denial. He's saying it's outrageous. A distorted account of the pandemic's being pushed with partial leaks, spun to fit an anti-lockdown agenda, which could have cost, he says, hundreds of thousands of lives if followed. He said what the messages do show is a lot of people working hard to save lives. Your message, keep it clean, one sentence to Matt Hancock today.
Well, I think experts have now come out and said, that this is not true, is it? Having seen what the WhatsApp message have revealed, I don't know what to say, Julia. I am still lost for words that, this distress could have been avoided.
Absolutely. Look, you've been a fantastic campaigner, not just for your loved ones, but for other people's families as well. I'll take my hat off to you, Diane Mayhew, co-founder of Rights for Residents. James Bilby is Chief Exec of the Federation of Wholesale Distributors, listening to that. I mean, this was the really heartbreaking stuff during the lockdown.
Yeah.